Hello, everyone. Today, I want to talk about the importance of staying invested during good times and bad times. So, typically, when we talk about this, we talk about hearing stories of people that move all their money to cash when they get scared because they're unsure of what the future holds, they're unsure of what the market's going to do, and then they wait too long to move back into being invested. What I want to kind of show today is the importance of staying invested through all different market environments, knowing that we will have periods that are going to see negative returns. We're going to have recession years. We're going to have periods that are really tough to stay invested, but it's an important thing to do, even if it's not an easy one. So, what I want to kind of first show is what the impact of missing some of the best days of the year are. It's like some of the best days in the market, and then when those days are. So what we kind of see here is a chart is if you stayed invested in kind of dark blue and teal. So if you invested $10,000 in 2002 into the S&P 500, and then if we had missed the best 10 days of the year in gray down here. So if you'd stayed invested that $10,000 by the end of 2022, that $10,000 would have been $61,000, whereas it would have only been $28,000, significantly less, just by missing the best 10 days of that time period. Now, and I keep saying year, it's the best 10 days of that time period. One thing I want you to notice is when these 10 days occur. So the biggest 10 days, you're going to see a lot of them in 2008, some in 2009, and some in 2020. Now, what you'll notice is 2008, 2009, that's the great financial crisis. We had the banking system crash, we had real estate market crash, we had about a 50% drawdown in the S&P 500. Arguably one of the hardest times to stay invested because all you saw was negative news. It was negative news. It was bad news. It was we're financially destroyed. How are we going to get back from this? And what I want to point out is you look at the next 10 years and we had terrific growth. Next time you see those 10 best days is going to be 2020. So the pandemic, we had a whole global economic shutdown, something that we'd never seen that scale before. We didn't know what was happening. Now, I point this out to say these are the 10 best days, not the 10 worst days. These are the 10 best days, but they happen within the worst time periods, the most volatile time periods, the most likely time that you are going to want to remove any risk from your account. Go to cash because that's the time where you are most nervous about the market. So when we talk about this subject, I really want to point out that as much as it's easy to say, hey, well, you can just stay invested, these best days don't happen in great years. They happen in times of typically a lot of turmoil where you're seeing a lot of volatility day to day. And if you miss those days, it can very much hurt your return. To kind of show it a different way, I mean, let's look at it here with a hypothetical again. If you started in 1999, still invested in the S&P 500, but you did it for just 20 years. So rather than ending in 2022 on $10,000 here with this 20-year period, we're just moving it back from 1999 to 2018. If you miss the best 5 days in the market, that $100,000 grows by 97,000, but you lose $100,000 of growth. So staying invested for that 20-year period on a $100,000 investment, you're almost at 300,000, missing the best 5 days, which again, those best 5 days are going to happen in 2008, 2009. You are dropping by $100,000. Best 10 days, $150,000, and so on and so forth. You're losing a lot of value by missing those days. Again, come back to here. That is why in times like this, it is important to know we have had recessions before. We are going to have recessions again. Companies are going to continue to figure out how to be profitable, how to run their business, how to make money, and there's going to be a recovery. We have not gone through a period, even in the Great Depression, where businesses did not recover. And I always say, if businesses get to the point where they don't recover, your investment portfolio is the last thing on your mind when a situation like that comes in. I mean, you look at both of these time frames, and they are dramatic time frames. You are hearing dramatic news stories. You are hearing a lot of things pumped at you that this time's different. We're not going to recover. This is the worst thing that could have happened. And in both those cases, we have recovered. So, looking at it from a slightly different way, this is where we often hear it's a lot easier said than done. So what this chart is showing, it's the consumer confidence index in the stock market. And what you'll notice is periods where it's really low down here is you don't have a lot of faith in the market. If we could overlay this, you notice 2008, 2020, where we are right here, 2022. These are all periods where we had those big up days, so those best days of that time period. A lot of them were in 2008, 2009, right when you had the least amount of faith in the market. 2020, very low amount of faith. 2022, we've had a couple big days. 2022, very little faith in the market here. Those best days typically come when you are in the midst of a lot of turmoil, and staying invested is your best defense against missing those days. Yes, it's going to be tough. Yes, you're going to see your account value drop in those periods. But if you move to cash, the likelihood of you getting back invested in an opportune time is very, very low. If we kind of come back here and look back at this chart, what you would typically see is someone might go to cash right around here once we've already had a decent amount of market drop. And you're going to hear them say, well, I'll know when to get back in. I'm not comfortable with the market now. I don't feel comfortable. I think we're going to continue to see drop down. I'll get back in when we're on an upswing. Well, you typically don't see them feel comfortable probably until maybe 2010, 2011. So you miss a lot of that recovery here, but you still got a lot of drop down or the drawdown originally. So if you moved to cash here in 2008 and you said you didn't feel comfortable until 2010, well, that recovery, a lot of it happened in the back half of 2009 and you missed it. So rather than being back to normal by maybe 2011, 2012, it might not have been 20 till 2013, 2014 that you got fully back. That's even more dramatic here in 2020 because this 34% drawdown we saw really happened in about 5 weeks. So if you saw it drop that dramatically quick and you got out maybe towards the end of March of 2020, well, we saw that recovery happen in about 6 months. So it is very unlikely with the pandemic still raging that you said, okay, great, I'm going to jump back in April 1st. Well, if you didn't jump back in the first 2 weeks of April, you missed about 10 to 15% of that recovery. And rather than you having a positive return by December of 2020, you probably didn't have a positive return until somewhere into late 2021 because you missed it. Now, that can really manifest to be quite a large amount of money. I mean, we look at it here, that's $100,000 difference. Just missing 5 days. I mean, that can be really, really traumatic. And the likelihood of one, you timing when to get out correctly, and then two, you timing when to get back in correctly, I'd bet pretty top dollar that you're not going to time either of those well. The best thing to do is just to stay invested. Now, again, it's much, much easier said than it's done because you're going to hear water cooler talk of people saying, oh, they got into cash. You're going to hear stories of people that are saying they timed it right, that they nailed it. Yes, there's going to be maybe 1 in a million that do it. And there's going to be a lot of people that don't tell you that they did it poorly. They don't announce that. I mean, so it's going to be hard to do it because everything around you is going to be saying, maybe this time's different. It's again, look back historically and say, all right, businesses learn to retool and make money. Recessions are normal and part of an economic cycle. Now, the other thing you can look at in a drawdown that's kind of slightly different is taking advantage of it. You want to take advantage of volatile markets. So, what we're seeing here is kind of what happens when you invest throughout a down market. So, this is less on staying invested and more of taking advantage of times where you might not want to stay invested. So, those down periods. So, what this is showing is two different two different scenarios of the same time frame is someone that invests $12,000 in January of a year that we had a drawdown and then a recovery, or someone that dollar cost average. So this would be dollar cost averaging is like putting money into your 401k where it goes in every paycheck or doing it a little bit every month. Or you can take this and say, rather than it being 12 months, make it 12 years. This could be you putting in money over a decade and plus 2 year period. So what would happen here is if you say put that $12,000 in all here, well, you're buying $25 a share, 480 shares. So at the end of that period, you have 480 shares and your cost was $25. So at the end of that period, if it's $27, you've grown a little bit, but again, not that many shares. And this is a pivotal point is you purchase shares. When you buy into the stock market, you are not putting just an endless pool of money. You are actually purchasing shares of businesses. So when the dollar value drops down, you are able to purchase more shares for the same amount of money. So if we look here and say, all right, well, if you took that $12,000 and you put $1,000 in every single month, well, 40 shares at 25, 40 shares at 25. If the share price drops to $20, well, yeah, you see both of these drop in value. So your account value is dropping in value, but it's because those share prices are dropping in value. You put in another thousand, well, now you're suddenly buying 50 shares. At $18, you're buying 55.6 shares. At $15, you're buying 66 shares. Back up, if it's $27, well, you're only buying 37 shares. So this is also kind of a point too, is when you get times where the market's doing well and growing. So if we kind of come back over here and we look at this period right here, well, everyone is excited to put money into their 401k. Like, oh gosh, I put money in my 401k and it just keeps going up and up and up. Well, if you look at a year like, let's say 2017 right here, where you see it's just almost straight up. Well, what's happening is by the time you get here, that $1,000 is only buying maybe 15 shares, where when you started January, that $1,000 might have been buying you 25 shares. So yes, it's appreciating, but you're only able to buy is the same amount of money, you're buying less. So if you're keeping your 401k contribution the same and it's the same dollar amount, your salary hasn't changed. So you're putting, say, $1,000 in a month, you're actually buying less shares because everything's more expensive. Now, I'm not saying don't invest when the market's going up. You want to do that, but where you really can take advantage of getting things on sale and getting a higher quantity is in times like this. So what ends up happening is you end this year with 617 shares, each share being worth $27, but your average cost was only 19 because you bought in all these cheap periods. So not only do you have a lower average cost, but you have a higher amount of shares. So if you looked at this account balance or this account balance, well, it's 480 shares at $27, or do you want 617 shares at $27? So this account will have a higher balance because you took advantage of this period. So it's not only staying invested when markets are down, you also want to make sure, if you can, take advantage of it. Keep investing. So if you still have an income through a recession, which that's the hard part, a recession typically comes with not only volatile markets and down markets, but also unfortunately layoffs, higher unemployment. But if you are in a position where you still have income coming in, make sure through those times you are staying consistent with your contributions. And honestly, if you can increase your contributions, put 1% more into your 401k, add a little bit more to your Roth IRA, your traditional IRA, throw some into a brokerage account, and get that money invested, times like that are absolutely great times to be investing. I believe it's Warren Buffett that said, you want to be greedy when other people are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. So when you see a recession and you see people kind of being really scared, uh, one thing you kind of want to look at doing is this a good buying opportunity? Should I look at increasing my contributions? Because again, we're going to have more recessions in the future. We've had plenty of recessions in the past. You're investing in businesses and you're investing in those businesses for growth and appreciation. And if you can get a discount on that, and if you can kind of take a step back and say, hey, this is money for a long time from now, or this is money that I'm actively using. You got to kind of see where you're at, but knowing that a recovery will happen. It's just a matter of time and making sure that one, stay invested during those volatile periods, continue to invest during those volatile periods, and kind of know there's going to be a recovery. So it's, again, much easier said than done, but it is something we felt it was an important topic to kind of put out there because, especially filming this in 2022, where we're in the midst of a market drawdown, I think it's even more important to talk about this again now. But again, check out more of our videos. Feel free to reach out if you ever have any questions. We're happy to help anyone. But talk to you later.